Christine from 95.7, and back with me is Nisha McKenzie, PA at Grand Rapids OBGYN and sexual health counselor. You just have a lot of titles.
Tell me whatever you want.
Oh, hello. Which is
hard to talk today.
I was going to say, it's perfect for our topic today for Just the Tip Tuesday. We're going to be talking about BDSM and kinky stuff. This is going to be a new experience for me. So let's start off with the basics. BDSM, what does it stand for?
Bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, sadism and masochism.
Okay.
The medical community and maybe outside of the BDSM community, a lot of people will refer to it as BDSM, and some people in the community do as well. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people in the community just refer to it as kink. So here's we're going to see if we can make Christine blush today. BDSM is something that people self-identify.
Okay.
So it's not, it's kind of a community. I mean, ask anything you want. We can talk about any aspect of BDSM you want, but it doesn't all have to be infliction of pain. Pain doesn't have to be part of it. And some people like a little hair tug or a little spank or to play with a feather.
Oh my gosh, I like hair tugging. Does that mean I'm into BDSM?
Totally.
So it could start off with something as simple as hair pulling and get into some of that really kinky stuff that involves whips and swings and leather and
right. You can
chokers.
You don't have to. and not everyone participates in every aspect of BDSM. So some people just want to do just hair pulling. Some people want to do just leathers. Some people want to do just bondage. The one thing to keep in mind is BDSM means different things to different people, and there's no right or wrong answer to this. Doesn't have to be sexual. It can be sensual. It can just be an increase in your senses, in your arousal. Oftentimes there's no penetration. It's just an experience that brings your emotions and your mentality and your mentation to a different level. Some of the forms of bondage are beautiful. Shibari is this beautiful art form where people are tied, and it's, like I said, not always sexual. It's sometimes sensual. It's sometimes just the art form, and it's always consensual. The person who's doing it has to know what they're doing. Okay. You always have to know how to get the person out of the bondage immediately. You know, you have to know, and trust is a huge thing.
I would hope so if you're going to be doing stuff like this.
Right, but really not different from normal sex, right? Trust is huge. We kind of talked about that last time.
Consent and communication and trust.
So trust is a huge thing with this, and communication is a huge deal with any kind of relationship that's considered out of the norm or not vanilla.
By the way, the poop emoji is still here making an appearance. That I assume that could be a part of kinky stuff, which
there is.
It's a little weird, the whole peeing and
doing
other stuff on each other.
Into it, and again, if it's consensual, who are we to say, right? I mean, if people like it and they both like it, obviously, if one person doesn't and one person does, then that's probably not cool.
Yeah.
But if both people like it,
I feel like in today's day, a lot of people associate the whole BDSM, S&M, the kinky stuff with 50 Shades of Grey. A lot of people you would hear, this movie is wrong, he's basically raping her, he's forcing her. What do you have to say about that? Is it sexual abuse?
So there's so many misnomers to this movie. Okay. First of all, the fact that he was abused and then got into domination and submission. Yep. That's not always the case. That's not even most of the time the case. Right. So
that's a stereotype right there. That people who are into this stuff were abused.
Yes. Yeah. Correct. So that's already wrong. And then there's this whole thing. One of my favorite sex educators, Emily Nagoski, does this whole bit on genital non-concordance. And that is when we're completely aroused but dry as a bone. Or vice versa, right? We may not like at all what's happening, but be wet. And so there's a lot of data and studies into this phenomenon, but what the 50 Shades of Grey series does not take into consideration is science, basically, and I kind of like science.
Yeah, there's science behind sex.
I mean, think about the spanking scene.
Yeah.
Right, where he says, Anastasia, do you feel how wet you are? Is that a good rendition?
So better acting.
I have another future. So when he says that, and he says, your body is responding to me.
Yeah, I remember that.
This, right? And she even talks later about how she feels debased and degraded, or I can't remember exactly the words that she used, and how she didn't feel like she loved it. But he said, I was wet, so I must have liked it. And oh my God, genital non-concordance. That's what I want to shout.
Can you imagine if you shouted that at the theater?
Genital non-concordance, idiots! Because it doesn't always happen that way. There are, sadly, cases where women are raped.
Yeah.
And they'll orgasm. And there's so much shame that they experience after that because they think, I must have wanted it or something, and it's not true. It's, and like I said, Emily Nagoski, look her up, she's fabulous. She's got a great book, but she talks about this in the sense that it's sexually relevant. So the context is, there is a penis going in a vagina, there is a physiologic response. That doesn't mean your heart and soul and your mind wanted it.
Yeah.
Right? So
that's the science part of it.
That's the science part, exactly. So yeah, genital non-concordance is not taken into consideration when she wrote 50 Shades of Grey. It was good in the fact that so many people read it and it brought to light what is BDSM. People started Googling, people started asking, and so it's nice to know that more people are talking about it and learning about it, and that's the thing, is we have to learn about it.
So it shouldn't be a shameful thing if this is what people are into.
No, this is what normal people are into. This is what your grocer does. This is what your hairstylist does. This is what your doctor does. This is what your boss does.
I don't want to picture my boss.
I'm going to give you a minute. You and the videographer.
Yeah.
To swallow
Wendy and I need to get this image out of our heads. Take 2.
So the kink is what you want it to be, and it's what you talk about beforehand. So there's always pre-scene, so these are called scenes often when you're together, pre-scene negotiation.
If you are into any sort of BDSM or kink, is this something you feel like people should talk about if they're getting into a relationship? How soon is too soon to talk about it, or when do you introduce and tell the other person, hey,
here's what I'm into?
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. I usually recommend, and this is a total personal preference, so it's really whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay.
But I usually recommend maybe not the first date.
No.
Maybe don't lead with that.
The first date, you talk about your job, you talk about your life, you talk about your interests outside of the bedroom. I would
maybe not your vagina.
Yeah.
So, but if you're thinking about getting serious with this person, it's certainly something you want to bring up. But maybe someone in the partnership after 20 years kind of wants to introduce something, right?
Yeah.
So then that's nerve-wracking too. We've been doing it this way for 20 years.
Yeah.
How are we going to change now? So you can frame it in the sense of a fantasy, or say something like, have you ever thought about this? And you don't have to say, hey, listen, this is occupying all of my mental space right now. All I can think about is spanking the shit out of you. So maybe don't do that. But if you kind of lead with, have you ever thought about this? And then it kind of opens up a conversation, because possibly they've been thinking about it too, but have been scared to say something. So it's a little bit of an awkward conversation, or it can be at first, but think of the payoff. I find that partners that are in a kinky relationship or a poly relationship or any kind of BDSM relationship often have I don't know if a better relationship, but a better relationship, because the communication is so strong.
And with something like that, you have to have communication. You can't just surprise someone with that in the middle of sex.
I bought a flog. But their communicative patterns are so much more healthy and solid than a lot of patients that I see, or couples that I see that are in long-term monogamous relationships that take things for granted. It's not all about pain. It's about whatever it takes to arouse your senses. And sometimes people that have simply what's termed as vanilla sex just haven't taken the time or the thought to kind of step out of their boundaries and go, would I like that?
Yeah, you don't know until you try it.
For the most part, there are some things that I know I wouldn't like.
Oh, yeah. Insert poop emoji. Right. I wouldn't like that.
So, yeah, there are some things you do know. But there are some things that, if you allow yourself to be with a trusted partner, to have the conversations prior, and to say, here's my word that I say that, everything has to stop here. Maybe you like it.
So what would be your tip or tips for Just the Tip Tuesday this week?
Safe, sane, and consensual is kind of a key acronym in this community, that they are constantly focusing on safety, keeping everybody sane, keeping everybody happy and communicative, and making sure everything's consensual.
Yeah, it's the main thing. I feel like that's going to be the main theme out of all of these Tip Tuesdays is consent and communication.
And that applies very strongly in the BDSM community. I'd love for it to apply to every couple, every relationship, every partnership. Everything needs to be safe, sane, and consensual, and often it's not only in BDSM but also in vanilla relationships. So it gets a bad rap, and I'd love for it to not to.
So safe, sane, consensual, and you mentioned vanilla relationships a lot. You know, there's nothing wrong with adding some sprinkles on that vanilla ice cream. I'm just
Is this your sprinkle?
And it's getting hot again. Thank you, Nisha.
You're very welcome. There are also lots of websites that you can be involved with. There are a lot of different kink-aware professional websites that you can find kink-aware professionals in your area. So there's ways that you can figure out how to do it, but you do have to do your homework, and you do have to know what you're doing before you go into a scene.
Yes.
So, you know, if anybody wants to leave any comments and ask any questions about, you know, where to find kink-aware professionals, or how to find a workshop, or there are munches. Have you heard of munches? So these, nothing happens at these. Typically, these are just a meet and greet where people talk about. So munches are where people get together and have lunch in a restaurant with other people.
What kind of lunch are we talking here?
And they just talk about things, so you can go and start learning about what's available in your community. Because, believe it or not, there's a big kink community here. We just have to find it. It's kind of dark.
Embrace your inner kink, West Michigan.
Definitely.
I think, anything else?
I think I need to pour some ice down her back. We'll see if she's into that as well.
We'll find out on the next.
On that next.
Yeah, on the next Just the Tip video. Thanks, Nisha.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. And
will I fall into a black hole in the internet if I look this up?
You might not safe for work.
It was great.
We're rolling.
That's good. I'm getting hot, but I don't have a layer to take off.
Next time, wear less clothes.
Okay, note to self.